Transmigration. Let me warn you right off that what follows is a little heady, maybe a lot heady. So please ground yourself and hang on. I've been writing these last days about the 3 eclipses in a row that we're now in the middle of, and the opportunity for inner change that times like these can bring. Yet words can only take us so far, and we all know that. Beyond words is the life experience that words can but refer to, point at. And we each will have to go deeper into life ourselves to have that experience. We can stand as long as we want with our toe in the swimming pool. But sooner or later, and it will happen, we each have to take the plunge, or life will push us in anyway. Eclipse times, and also times of intense solar activity like flares, are moments when change can be more obvious for us to see, and that we can feel the urge of it. But we will have to just time out a bit and allow the mind to rest long enough for us to pick up on it. The highest Tibetan Lamas tell me that inner alignment is very, very exact at times of eclipses. So in a very real way, we each are like the old camera obscura, surrounded by darkness and watching the world projected on our own inner movie screen through a tiny pinhole of light, which I call the view or vantage point of the self. And the lens of the self that we peer through is nothing more than the sum total of all our attachments, our likes and our dislikes. That's how we identify who we are, as me, myself, and I. This self is the most common vantage point that we use, but there are others. And I mention this here because at times of change like these, we can, of course, actually change. And the greatest or most common change is one of our attitude, the way we see things or our view. It is much easier to change our attitude or our approach to life than it is to rearrange everything outside ourselves in the world so that it fits our viewpoint. And there are little and big changes of view that are possible. Someday we will each learn to remove those self-attachments, these little likes and dislikes, one by one, and just allow ourselves to expand into the full light of our own natural just being awareness. This is what all the wise persons tell us, and they even tell us how to do it. And here's my point. When we do become more aware, it won't be from the vantage point of ourself. And I have found that this point is a little difficult to grasp, but understanding it or beginning to understand it is crucial to having any inner vision at all. We have all endlessly heard admonitions from our parents and teachers like, don't be selfish, not to be selfish, and things like that. This is not simply some moral imperative that we're expected to follow, but it's a true clue as to what will eventually take place for each of us. This state of not being selfish is a clue that we will then no longer be looking from the vantage point of the self, and we need to understand this because it helps. Instead, like a spider on a web, we will crawl across life, handhold by handhold, moving from our self-perspective to a yet more enlightened view. And this changing view, this new vantage point, is indeed profound. It has been called the transmigration of consciousness, and it's well worth understanding. So transmigration is not so much a transfer of consciousness, like from one body to the next, as many books suggest. Although that's what we study when we invoke terms like reincarnation, metempsychosis or rebirth. Yet this, like so many things, can be misleading. True transmigration is a transfer of view. It's a transfer of vantage point. And it can be done right in the here and the now that we all have, in this life, certainly as well as in any series of successive lives to come. As the Tibetans continue to point out, the life we now live is also just another bardo state. In fact, there are only bardo states until we wake up and become enlightened. The entire point of all spiritual knowledge, all of it, meditation, mind training instruction, etc., is to point out how we can go about letting go of where we are now bound by our attachments, like our attachments to a patchwork self. This view that most of us imagine that we stand behind and have drawn around ourselves unknowingly, our self, and instead migrate or expand to a view as wide as awareness itself. And it's this awareness that we can take with us when we die. At that point, death, we should know that we cease to identify with the self as exclusively who or what we are, and we gradually learn to migrate to another vantage point, one of awareness of our own awareness. This is what transmigration is really about, and it can take place as much in this as any other next life. Moreover, sooner or later, we just have to learn to do it. It's going to happen anyway, with or without our consent. And eclipse times and solar flares can make this process more obvious, easier to grasp. At times of change, like these, we stand teetering on the brink of changing our view, changing our vantage point. Changing it from assuming that life is as we see it from the point of the self, to letting that go and transmigrating to a view that's as wide as awareness itself. And that's what meditation practice is all about.